Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is John M. Hawkins. The show is called My Strategy, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're very happy to be here with you today. Really glad you could join us. My Strategy shows are live. They're on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Today, we're going to be talking about, is your mind open or closed? We're going to be talking about open-mindedness and how having an open mind can be tough. And there are some benefits to being closed-minded, but ultimately open-mindedness can help us grow. So we're going to talk about some traits and help you develop your open-mindedness strategy. All right, well, happy to be here today. Saturday is a great day to reflect. It's the day of the week that I choose to reflect on my personal development and my personal strategy. But just keep in mind that any time is a great time to assess your strategy. Now, the My Strategy show continues to grow. We're on iHeart, iTunes, Player FM, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and many more digital platforms. So you can go listen to past episodes there in the podcast format. You can also find me on YouTube. We have a streaming version of the show as well. You can find me on most social media platforms. My Twitter handle is @HawkinsJohn. And my website is johnmhawkins.com. So Twitter is HawkinsJohn. Website is johnmhawkins.com. And just like anything in life, we need to have a strategy and a plan to help us reach our goals because the best laid plans don't always work. This week, I am looking for your stories about being open-minded or perhaps closed-minded, whichever end of the spectrum you choose to focus. Do you have any examples, a tip, or a trick you could send to me? Would love to start a conversation. My email address is talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. All right, so this week we're talking about, is your mind open or is it closed? We're going to be talking today about how having an open mind can be very tough, but there are many benefits. I think that, our beliefs and principles that have brought us up throughout the years get ingrained in us, and it becomes difficult sometimes to be open-minded about certain areas in our life, and therefore we're closed. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some of the benefits of being closed-minded. Who knew? We want to try and be open-minded, but there are some benefits. We're going to talk about how equilibrium is comfort, how we remain empowered, spend time as we wish. We can protect against some bad advice. We're then going to talk a little bit about how certain people who are open-minded and do it very proficiently have traits. Some interesting traits, like they embrace change. They're very curious. They try new things. They don't judge. They're open to learning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the many benefits of being open-minded. How it can help you become more empathetic to others, understand what they are going through. I'm going to talk about some of the factors that influence it. In fact, your personality has an impact on how open-minded you are, how comfortable you are with ambiguity. So who knew? Personality traits can be a determination as to how open-minded you are. We're then going to talk about ways that we can learn to be open-minded, how we can fight the confirmation bias, ask questions. Give it some time if you're struggling with it, and we're going to learn about how to practice intellectual humility. All right, so today we're talking about being open-minded. I want to start off with an article by Dani DiPiero. It's called The Benefits of Being Open-Minded. She said, being open-minded can really be tough sometimes. Most of us are brought up with a set of beliefs and values that throughout our lives tend to surround ourselves with people who share the same values and beliefs. And how true is that? Therefore, it can be difficult when we are faced with ideas that challenge our own. And though we may wish to be open-minded, we may struggle with the act of it from time to time. The author, Dani, says that she'd like to say she's fairly open-minded, but like most people, she does have some pretty strong views in specific topics and find it hard to sway away from those opinions, no matter how others might try to persuade me. And I think you're going to find this, that while some people are open-minded in certain areas of their lives, in certain topics, there's other topics that they're absolutely closed-minded about. So as you think about being open-minded, know that there are certain topics that are fair game and you might be open-minded about, but then there's some other topics that people are completely closed-minded about. So know that just because somebody is very closed-minded on a particular topic, that does not mean they are completely closed-minded. She says, of course, she fully believes that having strong beliefs can be wonderful, and she believes we should all stay true to what we believe in, but having strong beliefs doesn't mean having a closed mind. Though it can be sometimes difficult to do, she always finds that when she does have an open mind, she's reaped lots and lots of reward, lots of benefits. She says there's much to be gained from opening the door to your mind and letting new ideas come in. Here are just a few benefits that she's uncovered as she's taken the time to view this world with an open mind. Number one, she says, letting go. When you open your mind, you free yourself from having to be in complete control of your thoughts. You allow yourself to experience new ideas and thoughts, and you challenge the beliefs you currently have. Experience change. Opening your mind to new ideas allows you the opportunity to change what you think and how you view the world. Now, this doesn't mean you necessarily will change your beliefs, but you have the option to. Making yourself vulnerable. She says one of the scariest and greatest things about seeing the world through an open mind is making yourself vulnerable. In agreeing to have an open mind view of the world, you're admitting you don't have everything and that there are possibilities you may not have considered. Kind of shows you how much you don't know. That can be a scary thought. Making mistakes doesn't seem like it would be much of a benefit, but it truly is. When you open your mind and allow yourself to think from others' perspectives, you allow yourself not only to recognize potential mistakes you've made, but also to make new mistakes. Doesn't sound like much fun, Danny says, but it's a great thing to fall and get back up again. Strengthen yourself. Having an open-mindedness provides a platform on which you can build, piling one idea on top of another. With an open mind, you can learn about new things, and you can use those new ideas to build on the old ideas. She says it can help you gain confidence. When you live with an open mind, you have a strong sense of self. You're not confined by your own beliefs, nor are you confined by the beliefs of others. For that reason, you are able to have and gain confidence as you learn more and more about the world around you. Finally, she says, being honest. There's an honesty that comes with an open mind, because being open-minded means admitting that you aren't all-knowing. It means believing that whatever truth you find might always have more to it than you realize. So just some ideas there from Danny DiPerino. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about the benefits of being closed-minded. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I am your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. The show is called My Strategy. We're all about personal development. If you'd like, you can send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com, to talk@johnmhawkins.com, because we would love to get your thoughts, opinions, ideas. Today we're talking about, is your mind open or closed? Right before the break, we were talking about how having an open mind can be tough, but there are benefits. We talked about some of the beliefs and principles, values that are ingrained in us throughout our upbringing, and how there are certain topics that are open for us being open-minded about, and other topics which we absolutely have a closed mind. But have no fear. That doesn't mean that you are a closed-minded person. It just means that certain topics you have a firm set of beliefs in. And so what I want to talk about this segment is, having an open mind is a soft skill. It's a trait. It's something that's good. But are there benefits of being closed-minded? That's what I want to talk about in this segment, because we always want to look at both sides of that proverbial coin out there. I've got an article here by Marty Nemko. He says the benefits of being closed-minded. Open-mindedness has more liabilities than may be apparent. Well, who knew? This show is all about today. We're talking about how to be more open-minded. Marty has a differing view. Marty says years ago he was a subscriber to Berkeley Repertoire Theater and happened to run into its director. He asked if he wouldn't mind a bit of feedback. He said, "Why, yes, I would mind." Marty was shocked. He thought, he doesn't have to accept the suggestion, but couldn't he at least listen to see if my advice was worthy? After all, open-mindedness avoids our becoming stale. It facilitates personal growth and even makes us better liked because we've reacted well to other people's ideas. Isn't that the whole purpose of being open-minded? Isn't that what we're all striving to do? Marty says, but he's come to realize that being closed-minded has benefits. So the first benefit, he says, is equilibrium is comfort. We work for years, perhaps decades, to develop and refine our core opinions and the way we work, interact, play, and think. It's not fun to have that shaken because someone says that their idea is better. And with regard to foundational matters like a socio-political worldview, it feels good to maintain unbending pillars, lenses through which to curate the avalanche of input we get. Even someone's input would provide a net benefit unless that benefit were great. Remaining comfortable in equilibrium can outweigh that benefit. So he's saying this equilibrium we have is comfort. How you're brought up, all those things, experiences that happened, set your mindset. We could also say you are closed-minded, but there's a certain comfort there. Second benefit, Marty says, is we remain empowered. Getting advice, even wise advice, is disempowering. It reminds us of our limitations. We weren't smart enough to think of that good idea ourselves. Instead of being open to unsolicited input, it's more empowering for us to decide if we need input and where we can solicit it. Now, I'm going to interject by saying you might be a little bit jealous. Somebody knows something you don't know. Somebody had the idea that you didn't have. But by keeping a closed mind, you can maintain that empowered state. I think that's true of coaching too. When you give somebody feedback, feedback can be harsh. It can be a reality, and it shocks us. We're protected from the recent effect. Being open-minded can too quickly shake us from our aforementioned carefully developed ideas. For example, we may long have believed that a particular political party is superior, yet sometimes a passionate advocate for another party in minutes pressures us into changing our mind, only if this is usually subconscious. Number 4, we spend time as we wish. I like this one. Someone's advice to you could be valid, and only to show your appreciation, you act on it when you believe there's a better use of your time. For example, he was once told that he could use a new wardrobe. Wanting to seem appreciative and not closed-minded, he was tempted to drag himself shopping when deep down he didn't think it was the best use of his time and money. And I think this is a good one because when we are open-minded and you open yourself to every possibility, every opinion, every topic that's out there, you do get into this analysis paralysis, and it becomes difficult to pick a direction and go. He says and the final one is we're protected against bad advice. When you're closed to input, you've eliminated the risk that criticism or advice is wrong or even is designed to hurt you. Sometimes we're insufficiently knowledgeable or secure enough to accurately judge someone's input. And that's the other thing. We're protected against bad advice. So I guess the question is, how open-minded do we need to be? And is there some benefit? And it would seem that this Berkeley repertoire theater director had a fixed mindset, had a direction he was going in. He had the characters set. He had everything the way he wanted it, and as a result, was closed-minded to input. Now, that doesn't mean that being closed-minded was bad, because for that director's perspective, it probably helped him to pick a direction, to create the characters as he envisioned the characters. So I think what this boils down to is that, while there are many benefits to being open-minded, there are many benefits to opening ourselves up to all different viewpoints. We really need, from a strategic perspective, to think about this not only tactically, because when we open up ourselves to new ideas, if we tactically start executing on all those ideas, we're going to become overwhelmed by those ideas. We're going to be consumed by those ideas. They are going to become our strategy. So from that perspective, we really need to balance how open-minded we are on specific topics, and then pick and choose the ones that we need to be closed-minded on. We're going to talk more about that later in the show. You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to pivot and go back to the open-minded philosophy, and we're going to talk about some of those traits that people have. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Today we're talking about, is your mind opened or is your mind closed? Right before the break, we were talking about the many benefits of having a closed mind. In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the traits of someone with an open mindset. So having a closed mind, there's some benefits to it. But what about those traits from someone who has an open mindset? Got an article here by Valerie Soleil, and it's called Traits of Open-Minded People. She says here that this is because not being open-minded is a surefire way to dwell into misery forever. Being open-minded is always at the top of the list of when it comes to traits and habits you need to acquire to be a happy person. So what makes the open-minded people so open-minded? She says this is because narrowly minded people are never able to stretch their thoughts, knowledge, and ideas beyond a self-constructed boundary that prevents them from seeing varying aspects of a situation. They often view certain actions or situations with only one outcome and forego all the other possibilities that could be, if only they let them be. So the top trait is they are willing to accept. Being open-minded people have the ability to think about things from various angles and viewpoints. It allows them to accept more. For example, they may not view a rebellious youngster as a teenage waste of space, but rather someone who may have difficulties dealing with inner turmoil. They're willing to embrace change. Open-minded people are willing and able to embrace change with open arms because they see various positions and outcomes, rather than judging it only from one angle of experience. What about they have a high level of curiosity? Open-minded people have a natural ability to want to know more about something. They tend not to judge an idea that may be presented to them with only what they know. They prefer to inquire, learn, perhaps even discover new insight into something they were previously unaware of. Ask lots of questions. That's not only a sign of intelligence, but also shows that you are open-minded. Number 4, they're willing to try new things. Open-minded people also love trying new things. You can call it curiosity or willingness to embrace change. They don't mind trying out a new place for dinner, making friends, having a new hobby they look forward to. Open-minded people don't judge. Open-minded people are willing to listen to someone without judging them or jumping to conclusions before they have finished. In that sense, they make the best listeners. Number 6, they're open to other people's opinions. It's okay not to be opinionated. Of course, everyone has an opinion, but making and viewing your opinion as the only right way to see it is not a characteristic of an open-minded person. No, it's not. They have a good understanding of the facts that they don't have to agree with everyone or vice versa. They respect people's differences. One of the key characteristics of open-mindedness that makes them lovable, respectable, and admirable is that they are open to people's values, beliefs, and differences. I think you're going to find, as we continue through this show, that personality does have a lot to do with those people who are open-minded. They're not particularly fond of racist or biased views, and they believe that the differences are what make everybody unique, which is a valuable quality. They don't label people. They don't put tags on people. They usually have a good understanding of people's differences and respect them as best they can. They're people who live in the present. Open-minded people try not to dwell on the past too much because those mistakes or regrets were opportunities for betterment. They also trust that everything happens for a reason. Furthermore, they try not to fret over the future too much either because they see so many possible outcomes. Focusing on the present and appreciating those moments of fun, laughter, joy, relaxation makes more sense to them. Turn problems into opportunities. They acknowledge the fact that every problem has a solution, or at least a different perspective than the first. This enables them to see clearly when faced with difficult situations and tackles problems without panicking too much about what went wrong. For them, problems are opportunities to learn to fix. Well, it sounds like there's lots and lots of good traits of people who are open-minded, right? These are good things. You can accept, you can embrace change, high level of curiosity, willing to try new things. They don't judge, not opinionated. They respect others' differences. They don't label people. It sounds to me, like the people who are open-minded also don't have a fixed mindset, and they allow themselves to be open to new ideas. I think, one of the challenges is going to be with an open mind is how do we go about accomplishing our goals and our objectives if we are open-minded about absolutely everything? And I think that's where being open-minded, we have to start thinking strategically about it. There are certain topics that if you have open-mindedness about, or let's say you're closed-minded on, if you talk about those topics, if you focus on those topics, odds are you're never going to come to some sort of a consensus or agreement on that topic. And it becomes a situation where no matter how much you talk about it, and these are topics like religion and politics, you're probably never going to get anyone who has a closed, fixed mindset to look at your vantage point or your viewpoint. So if your personal development strategy is to focus on those topics and getting other people to be open-minded, you probably don't have a very high chance of being successful. Now, if you focus on being open-minded about things like children and education, world hunger, homelessness, you probably are going to have a better chance of getting people to be open-minded about it. Or if they're looking at losing weight or something that everybody can really relate to, you're going to have a better chance. So I think the important thing here for us is to really start to think about what are those things in life we are open and closed-minded about, and then start to focus our energies in the appropriate activities. You're listening to My Strategy. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about the many, many, many benefits of being open-minded. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. The show is called My Strategy. Well, welcome. So happy you could be here today. And if you're just joining us, My Strategy radio shows are live and on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, this week we're talking about, is your mindset open or closed? We've been talking about open-mindedness, how having an open mind can be tough, and there are many benefits to having a closed mind. But open-mindedness can help you grow. So we're talking about the open-mindedness traits and helping you to develop your open-mindedness strategy for your own personal development so that you can accomplish your goals and objectives, whether they be personal, business, any type of goal. These strategies all apply. All right, so in this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of being open-minded. We've kind of gone through some of the benefits, but it never hurts to be open-minded about additional points of view. And we've got an additional point of view from Kendra Cherry. She talks about the benefits of being open-minded. She says open-mindedness is a characteristic that involves being receptive to a wide variety of ideas, arguments, and information. Being open-minded is generally considered a positive quality. It is a necessary ability in order to think critically, to think rationally. And if you are not open to other ideas and perspectives, it is very difficult to see all the factors that could contribute to problems or come up with effective solutions in an ever increasingly polarized world. Being able to step outside your comfort zone and consider other perspectives and ideas is important. I'm going to highlight the fact, the polarized world. That is quite the understatement. This doesn't mean that being an open-minded is necessarily easy. Being open to new ideas and experiences can sometimes lead to confusion and cognitive dissonance when we learn new things that are in conflict with our existing beliefs. However, being able to change and revise outdated or incorrect beliefs is an important part of learning and personal growth. If you want to be able to enjoy the benefits of being open-minded, there are things that you can do to build this ability. So there's many, many different aspects to being open-minded, and we've talked about some of those aspects. She says, in everyday use, the term open-minded is often used as a synonym for being non-prejudgmental or tolerant. From a psychological perspective, the term is used to describe how willing people are to consider others' perspectives or try out new experiences. Open-mindedness can also involve asking questions and being active about searching for information that challenges your beliefs. It also encompasses the belief that other people should be free to express their beliefs and arguments, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. The opposite of open-minded is closed-minded or dogmatic. People who are more closed-minded are usually only willing to consider their viewpoints, and they're not receptive to other ideas. Even if you consider yourself a fairly open-minded person, there are probably certain topics on which you take a much harder stance. Things that you're passionate about on social issues, for example. Having convictions can be great, but strong beliefs does not negate an open mind. Being open-minded means having the ability to consider other perspectives and trying to be empathetic to people, even when you disagree with them. She says, of course, open-mindedness has its limitation. It does not imply that you must sympathize with every ideology, but making an effort to understand the factors that might have led to those ideas can be helpful in finding ways to help people change their minds. She goes on to talk about some of the characteristics of an open-minded person. They're curious to hear what others think. They're able to have their ideas challenged. They don't get angry when they're wrong. They have empathy for other people. They think about what other people are thinking. They are humble about their knowledge and expertise. They want to hear what other people have to say. They believe others have a right to share their beliefs and thoughts. Now, of these many benefits, the things that you're going to get out of being more open-minded are gaining insight into new ideas, fresh perspective. What about having new experiences? If you're open-minded, you might do something you've never done before. You know, one of the open-minded things that I'm very open-minded about is different foods. You know, it's one thing to eat the same thing every day, but if you go out and have another type of food, you know, there's all sorts of new experiences that you're opening yourself up to. Achieving personal growth, becoming mentally stronger, feeling more optimistic, learning new things. Lots of benefits. And there are some things that impact our open-mindedness. Some of these things you're not going to be able to change, but once you are aware that it is a factor, you're now going to be able to develop a strategy to develop that area. Personality. In the 5-factor model of human personality, openness to experience is one of the 5 broad dimensions that make up our human personality. So it's actually built in to you and your persona. Comfort with ambiguity. People have varying levels of comfort when dealing with uncertainty. Too much ambiguity leaves people feeling uncomfortable and distressed. Dogmatism is sometimes an attempt to keep things simpler and easier to understand. By rejecting alternative ideas that might make the status quo, people are to minimize uncertainty and risk. So how comfortable are you with ambiguity? So those are just a couple of the things that you can start to think about as you are trying to be more open-minded. You know, as we look at our strategy, if you do have a hard time, being open-minded about certain topics, I mean, number one, what topic is it? If it's something like religion or if it's something along those lines, you might have a very fixed mindset. You might have a closed mind. But if it's something other than that, about where are we going for dinner, there might be an opportunity for you to be a little bit more open-minded. So I think strategically we really need to start thinking about, what are those areas in our lives that we're trying to grow? What are those areas that are going to help us from a personal development perspective get ourselves to that next level? And in understanding those areas and being able to get into those and really grow, we are going to have to be more open-minded. We are going to have to figure out how to experience growth. So as part of our strategy, as we're starting to work on that, we need to start thinking, how do we go about picking and choosing what areas we want to focus on for us to be more open-minded about? So really, that's what we need to be thinking about there. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about ways we can learn to be open-minded. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I am your host, John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're very happy to be here with you today. I'm so happy that you could join us. My Strategy episodes are live and on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to be a friend of the show, you can send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. And we can never have too many friends, so please feel free to reach out. We're looking for your ideas on being open or closed-minded today. All right, before the break, we were talking about the many benefits of being open-minded and how that can help us. In this segment, I want to talk a little bit about ways that we can learn to be more open-minded. If you recall, right before the break, we were saying that personality had something to do with it, comfort with ambiguity, etc., etc. So to help us out, I am still leaning on Kendra Cherry and her article on benefits of being open-minded. And she says here, learning how to be open-minded is possible. That's good news. But it can be a bit of a challenge. In many ways, our minds are designed to view concepts as wholes. We develop an idea or a category of knowledge, which psychologist Jean Piaget referred to as schema. And as we come across new information, we tend to want to sort it into one of our existing schemas in the mental process known as assimilation. It's your mind map, right? Sometimes, however, the new things we learn don't quite fit in with what we already know. And in this instance, we have to adjust our understanding of the world in a process known as accommodation. Essentially, we have to change how we think in order to deal with this new information. She says assimilation tends to be a fairly easy process. After all, you're just filing new information into your existing filing system in your brain. She says accommodation is much more difficult. You're not just putting something new into your filing system, but you're creating a whole new filing system. That's an interesting way to look at it, right? If you have information and you already have a fixed mindset, a fixed way of thinking, your brain is organized like your file drive, like your computer drive, like a cloud drive. And when you get new information and you have a spot for it, great, take that information and process it. But she's saying here that with assimilation, that means that we're getting information and we don't have a filing system for it. We don't have that filing system developed in our brain. It kind of makes sense, right? I mean, we run into those problems when we're working with our technology. Why not run into this problem in our brains? She says sometimes new information requires rethinking the things you thought you knew. It requires reevaluating your memories and past experiences in light of what you've learned. In order to do this, you have to be able to set aside your judgments, take a serious look at the existing evidence, and admit that you were wrong. She says the process can be difficult, confusing, and sometimes painful, maybe even life-changing. It takes a lot of mental effort, but she gives us some ways that we can do it. She says, number one, you must fight the confirmation bias. Says confirmation bias is a cognitive tendency known as the confirmation bias, which can be one of the biggest contributors to closed-mindedness. Overcoming this tendency can be a bit tricky. The confirmation bias involves paying more attention to things that confirm our existing beliefs while at the same time discounting evidence that challenge what we think. So basically, if you have a view on the world and you are closed-minded, when you go try and get information, you are really biased towards finding that information, And whenever you see any sort of information, you are finding information that is going to confirm your current viewpoint, your fixed mindset, your closed mind. So she says that's one of the things that you need to be aware of, is your brain's naturally going to try and find things that fit into your filing system, not develop that new filing. So that's one thing to be thinking about as you become more open-minded. She says we need to ask questions. Most people like to believe in their own sense of intellectual virtue, and in many ways it is important to be able to have trust and faith in your own choices. But it is good to remember that what might seem like resolute and committed to certain ideas may actually be a form of closed-mindedness and stubbornness. Part of being open-minded involves being able to question not just others but yourself. As you encounter new information, ask yourself, how much do you really know about that topic? How trustworthy is this source? Going back to how much you know about the topic, there's all sorts of topics that I know enough about, or I think I know enough about. But this is a good point, because, where did you get your information? Have you considered other ideas? Are there other vantage points and viewpoints? And that's one of the things we try and do on this show, is bring in so many different viewpoints, because I could get up here and talk about my own viewpoint, my own vantage point, but we've got all these great authors out there and writers and people who think about this too on a daily basis. And we want to get their input. We want to get their ideas. We don't want to have that confirmation bias. We want to be able to figure out what other filing systems are out there. She says, give it time. When you hear someone you disagree with, your first instinct may be to disagree or to shut them down. Instead of listening or considering other perspectives, you enter a mode of thinking where you are just trying to prove the other person wrong, sometimes before you even have a chance to consider all points. I'm going to interject here and say, not only do we want to prove them wrong, but also sometimes, we really need to understand where they are coming from. And then she also goes on to talk about practice intellectual humility. Even if you're the expert, try to keep in mind that the brain is much more imperfect and imprecise than most of us want to admit. And as research has shown, being knowledgeable about something can contribute to closed-mindedness. Who knew? People who are experts perhaps are more closed-minded, according to this author. And I think that makes some sense, right? I mean, if you spend your whole life trying to work on something, trying to prove something, you are the expert. It's very difficult for you to be open-minded, because you've got the 10,000 hours in that particular subject, right? You're the expert. You're somebody who knows what they're doing, so why would you need to listen to someone else? I find myself falling into that category on certain topics. Other topics I'm more than open to learning about. And I think it comes down to, what is it that you are trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? What are those limitations? And how can we go about really finding those areas of growth and finding ways that we can excel? And once we've identified those, that's when you need to shift your mindset from being a fixed mindset to start exploring areas that are going to help you strategically. You're listening to My Strategy. I am your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about ways you can put your plan into action. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, John M. Hawkins, coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Very happy to be here with you today and glad you could join us. If you did miss this episode, you can find it on iHeartRadio, Apple iTunes, or just search for My Strategy, John M. Hawkins, and you'll find the latest version out there. If you'd like to have something covered in this show, send an email to talk@johnmhawkins.com. That's talk@johnmhawkins.com. Or you can give me a call at 1-844-MY-STRATEGY. That's 844-MY-STRATEGY. Today we've been talking about, is your mind open or closed. Talking about open-mindedness and how having an open mind can be tough. And it's especially tough because there's many benefits to being closed-minded. But if you are open-minded, it can help you grow. So we're talking about open-minded traits and helping you to develop your open-minded strategy. We talked earlier today about how having an open mind is tough, and the benefits. We talked about how there are beliefs and principles, values that are ingrained in us throughout our upbringing, and those things that we hold so dearly to us are very difficult to change. In many cases, we are closed-minded when it comes to those. But for many of us, if we are open-minded, there are lots and lots of benefits. Many of those benefits, though, are difficult for us to realize because being closed-minded has lots of benefits as well. People who are closed-minded have an equilibrium in their comfort. They remain empowered. You don't have to challenge what they know, and when you teach them something new, they might feel very scared in the sense that they don't know everything. So as a result of that, those people who are closed-minded have more time to spend on what they want to spend their time on. They can be protected against bad advice because being open-minded and listening to other people, it doesn't mean that those people are right. You could be right. And now you've spent all of this time being open-minded and listening to somebody else. So you're spending your free time as somebody else wants you to spend it. How fun is that? That's not fun. We then talked about, even though there were some benefits to being closed-minded, that there are lots of good traits of people with an open mind. They embrace change. They accept others. They have a high level of curiosity. They love to try new things. They don't judge others, and they're open to others' opinions. So we do know that while people who have a closed mind have a hard time opening up, if you pick certain topics that align with what you're trying to work on personally, you're going to have a better chance of opening up and being open-minded than those areas you are not so interested in. We also talked a lot about those various ways that we can be more open-minded, such as fighting the confirmation bias, asking questions, give it time, and absolutely practice some humility. Well, that's all the show we have for today. Very glad you could join us. I'm John M. Hawkins. The show is My Strategy, and we'll see you next time.